Here's something you've probably believed your entire life, that the people performing at the highest level are just built differently. More talented, more disciplined, maybe luckier. Something in them that isn't in you. And honestly, that belief feels safe. It removes pressure. If they were born with it, you were born without it. And that's just how the story goes. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. That belief isn't protecting you. It's neutralizing you. Because the moment you decide performance is a trait instead of a system, you stop looking for the system. And you spend years watching other people win while quietly telling yourself a story that was never actually true. So what is actually happening with high performers? Let's go there. Think about someone you know personally. Not a celebrity, not some billionaire on a podcast. Someone in your actual life, a coworker, a classmate, maybe a sibling who just always seems to get it done. They're not always the smartest person in the room. They're not always the loudest. Sometimes they're quiet, unremarkable in conversation. You wouldn't clock them as exceptional if you passed them on the street, but when it's time to perform, they show up differently. You've seen it. You felt that slight, uncomfortable thing watching them. Not exactly jealousy. Something quieter than that. A recognition, like some part of you knows something they know that you don't. That feeling is important. Don't dismiss it. That's your subconscious flagging a gap. And today, we're going to close it. Here's the first secret, and it's going to challenge something you value. 1. High performers don't rely on motivation. They've made peace with discomfort before the moment arrives. Most people believe that high performers are more motivated, more fired up, more driven by passion or purpose. Wrong. What actually separates them is pre-negotiated discomfort. Here's what that means. The average person wakes up on a hard day and then decides whether to push through. That negotiation happens in real time when they're already tired, already resistant, already looking for the exit. High performers made that decision before the day started, before the alarm, before the friction, before the moment required anything from them. They didn't overcome resistance in the moment, they eliminated the negotiation entirely. Think about that. The person who exercises consistently isn't fighting willpower every morning. They removed the decision point. They made it non-negotiable so far in advance that resistance doesn't get a seat at the table. That's not discipline in the way we romanticize it. That's architecture. They built a structure that doesn't require heroics to maintain. You can do that too, starting with one decision, one non-negotiable, one thing that no longer gets debated when you're tired. Now here's where it gets darker. 2. Most people perform for an audience that isn't watching. This one stings. Stay with it. A massive percentage of human behavior, effort, appearance, output, is unconsciously calibrated for external validation. We work harder when someone's watching, we slack when they're not. We perform brilliance in meetings and coast in private. We speak with conviction publicly and collapse in private discipline. We are performing at life instead of building inside of it. And the brutal irony, the people you're performing for are performing for someone else. Nobody's watching as closely as you think. The audience you're killing yourself to impress is distracted by their own reflection. High performers figured this out, usually the hard way. They stopped optimizing for observation and started optimizing for outcome. They do the work when no one's clapping, when no one's logging it, when the only witness is themselves. And here's the psychological shift underneath that. Their identity stopped being audience-dependent. They aren't consistent because people are watching. They're consistent because inconsistency would conflict with who they've decided they are. That's identity-level performance, and it hits different. 3. They don't manage time, they manage energy states. Time management is a surface-level game. Everybody knows the hacks. Block your calendar, batch your tasks, wake up at 5. Fine. But high performers understand something most productivity culture ignores entirely. You can have 8 hours and accomplish almost nothing. Or you can have 90 minutes in the right mental state and produce something extraordinary. The variable isn't time, it's cognitive and emotional energy. Elite performers ruthlessly protect their peak mental windows. They know when they're sharpest. They eliminate low-value input, meaningless conversations, excessive social media, decision fatigue before their peak window opens. They treat their mental state like an asset that depreciates throughout the day, because it does. Every low-value decision you make before your most important work costs you something real. Every distraction you indulge before peak hours isn't free. It has a cognitive price tag that you pay later in diluted performance. Here's the quiet truth underneath all three laws. Performance isn't a personality type, it's a system. A set of pre-made decisions, identity commitments, and energy strategies that compound over time. The people who always seem to perform better didn't get lucky with their DNA. They got honest about their architecture, and they built one that doesn't depend on how they feel on any given morning. That's the gap between you and the version of yourself that performs consistently. It's not talent, it's the system you haven't built yet. But here's the question you should actually be sitting with right now. Why haven't you built it? Sit with that question for a second. Don't rush past it, because your first answer is almost certainly wrong. Most people land on something comfortable. I don't have enough time. My circumstances are different. I'll start when things settle down. Those aren't answers. Those are exits. And the most dangerous part? They feel completely rational in the moment. That's the trap. Your mind doesn't lie to you aggressively, it lies to you reasonably. It constructs justifications that sound like wisdom, but function like cages. You're not avoiding the system because life is in the way. You're avoiding the system because building it would force a confrontation with yourself you're not ready to have. Here's what that confrontation actually looks like. You tell yourself you want to perform at a higher level. And you mean it. In that moment, you genuinely mean it. The intention is real, but intentions without architecture are just feelings with good PR. Because 24 hours later, when the alarm goes off early and the friction arrives, a different version of you makes the decision. A tired version, a comfortable version, a version that hasn't pre-negotiated anything. And that version always negotiates down. This isn't a character flaw. This is biology operating exactly as designed. Your brain defaults to energy conservation. Comfort isn't weakness, it's an ancient survival mechanism running a modern life it wasn't built for. The problem isn't that you're weak. The problem is that you're running outdated software and calling the glitches a personality. Now here's where most people expect the motivational turn, the "you've got this" pivot, the redemption arc that makes everything feel resolved. That's not what's happening here, because there's a layer underneath the system problem that almost nobody talks about. The hidden reason high performers perform consistently isn't discipline, it's identity protection. Read that again slowly. They're not doing the work because they feel motivated. They're doing the work because not doing it would create a conflict with who they believe they are. Their identity is load-bearing. When your identity is built around being someone who follows through, skipping becomes psychologically costly. It creates internal dissonance, and the brain will do almost anything to eliminate dissonance. So they show up, not out of passion, out of self-preservation. Most people haven't built an identity worth protecting. They have preferences, interests, vague aspirations, but not a defined self-concept that demands consistent behavior. That's the real gap. And here's the uncomfortable mirror in that truth. If you've been inconsistent, it's not because you lack discipline. It's because you haven't decided at the identity level who you actually are yet. That decision is available to you right now. Let's talk about something you've witnessed, but probably misread. You've been in rooms with high performers, maybe a meeting, a team setting, a social environment, and you notice something about the way they move through it. They don't explain themselves as much. They don't over-justify decisions. They don't chase urgency mid-conversation with upward inflection and nervous laughter. And you probably read that as confidence, natural confidence, like they were born comfortable in their own skin. Wrong. That restraint is trained. It's a deliberate behavioral architecture. They've learned, consciously or through repetition, that unexplained certainty communicates authority faster than any explanation ever could. Every time you over-explain, you're signaling doubt. Every time you justify unprompted, you're asking for permission. And people respond to that signal. Not consciously, but they recalibrate how much weight they give your words, your decisions, your presence. High performers don't just perform better internally, they've engineered how they register in the perception of others. That's not arrogance, that's precision. Here's the reversal you didn't see coming. Everything we've covered, the pre-negotiated discomfort, the identity-level commitment, the perception engineering, you might assume this is about becoming harder, more robotic, less human. It's actually the opposite. The people who perform consistently at the highest level are often the most emotionally present in their relationships, the most genuinely calm in high-pressure moments, the most capable of real connection. Because they're not leaking energy into internal negotiations all day. They're not burning cognitive fuel on decisions that should have been made in advance. They're performing for invisible audiences and managing the anxiety of inconsistency.
They have room for presence, because the architecture handles the friction. Emotional control isn't coldness, it is capacity. And people who've built that capacity don't just perform better professionally. They show up differently in every dimension of their lives. In conversations, in relationships, in the way they handle setbacks without unraveling. That is the part nobody mentions in the productivity content. Performance isn't a professional category. It is a complete operating system. Here is what you need to decide now, not tomorrow, not after you've thought about it more. Right now, in this moment, are you someone who observes high performance and files it under interesting? Or are you someone who extracts the architecture and installs it? Because information without application is just entertainment with ambition attached to it. You've been watching. You've been recognizing. Something in this has already landed for you. You know it has because you are still here. The question isn't whether you are capable. The question is whether you are willing to stop negotiating with yourself about it. Performance doesn't reward the talented. It rewards the architected. This pattern governs every room you've ever walked into, every relationship that has shifted, every moment someone's stock rose while yours stayed flat, and it operates below the level most people ever examine. There are layers to this you haven't seen yet. If you want to keep going, subscribe. This channel exists for people ready to understand the behavioral patterns running their lives, before those patterns make the decisions for them. Here's a quick one for you. Identify one area of your life where your performance is inconsistent. Ask yourself honestly, is this a motivation problem, or a decision I haven't made yet at the identity level? The answer will tell you more about yourself than anything else you'll do today.